Hello and welcome. This is Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and cover the Bootstrap Homework 1, Chapter 12, the business form. So the important things kind of want to go over. So here's all the different form fields you'll need, basically contact information is going to be a field set, right? A label. And so we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But here's your different labels, your different categories, so to speak. And then underneath each of these, you will have different fields, okay? Make sure you have both a email address and a confirm email. And on your account credentials, you have a password and a confirm password. And include these other ones all as well here. Notice about the drop down for the state has Missouri and Illinois only. And that's both for the billing address and for the shipping address. And here we make sure you have a submit button at the bottom. So I don't want to spend a lot of time going over specifics here. You can read through it. But basically, you're going to have a form, and all your fields need to be within that form, including your submit button. And go ahead and give it an ID of order form and a method of get. And actually, it's probably not best for that to do that with a form, and I'll mention that here in a little bit, but we'll talk about that. Grouping, so we want to do a semantic grouping. We're going to use field sets and legends to do those little groupings of different areas. So for the most part, we're going to be using a lot of input tags, a lot of input tags equal text, right? We will have a couple of selects for the drop down for Missouri and Illinois drop down. And then also we're going to have we'll have a checkbox as well. It should be mentioned on here as well. Ensure the IDs for the building are distinct. Does it mention that here? It's going to mention at some point. But you're also going to have a checkbox. But you're going to have mostly input forms, input elements. And then, you'll have a couple of selects and you'll have one checkbox. So you want to make sure that it's responsive for the most part. And make sure that you use a corresponding label for each input field. And that's for accessibility reasons. And also when you click on a label, it should put focus in that field as well. So that's another plus, but there's a certain way to use that for attribute. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that here in a minute. We've done this before. We talked about the forms before, but just kind of reiterate that, go through that again, kind of a review. We're going to use autocomplete attribute on these elements as well. Bootstrap styling, you want to make sure that you have a form label. Use the form label class and also the form control class. And then you also have a form select. And the submit button should have a button and a button primary. And we're just going to, for this one, there's different kinds of validation. You can use Bootstrap validation or HTML. So we're just going to use regular HTML validation. There is a kind of a little gotcha there with the HTML validation, which I'll show you here in a little bit. But okay, it does say down here, I guess it doesn't say it up there very much. Let's just highlight that a little bit just in case. All right, so first things we're going to do, what we kind of always do for any kind of a Bootstrap assignment, is we're going to go ahead and use the quick start. So we're going to want to go to getbootstrap.com. Come in here, go to Docs. And Docs is always going to go to this Get Start Introduction. Here's the quick start. This is the number 1. We want to go to number 2. So here's number 2. And we're just going to go ahead and copy that. And then I already have a folder set up to put that in right here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to call it index.html. Then in there, I'm going to copy my form. Not my form, but my starter code. And I always like to put a little spacing in between here. Okay. And then next we're going to add a container here. Use a div. And then we'll just do a class equals. And some of these Bootstrap, so Visual Studio Code should have, and it's not always the case, but a lot of times it has, because Bootstrap's very popular, so sometimes they have the completion for Bootstrap type things, and in this case, yes, it does. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose container there, okay? And so we're going to put pretty much everything within that container, okay? And then here I'm going to do an H1 tag. And I'm going to just, you can call this whatever you want. I think it was kind of supposed to be a fictional business, whatever name you want to get, fictional business. I'm just going to say order form. And then here I want to do, I want this to be centered, right? So I'm going to do class here. And I'm going to do text center, which is right down here. And I want to give it, in between this heading and when the form starts, I want to give it a little spacing. So I'm going to do margin bottom. So margin bottom is M for margin, B for bottom, -4, okay. And I think that's it there, okay. And then next, I'm going to do a form tag. And we're going to skip the action for now, just because we really don't want to submit it or anything. And I am going to call this basically what it has in the assignment ID of order form. And I'm going to do a method here of get, okay. And then so all of our input things, our inputs, our selects, our buttons, all need to be within the form tag, okay. So what I'm actually going to do, just for the sake of time, I'm going to copy I have an example. I'm going to copy everything in here, and I'm going to go through a lot of it, okay. At least the beginning parts, so you can see how we kind of do some things. And I can offer some suggestions to make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing, so to speak. Okay, I copied this in here and did open in live server. So here's the order form on the right-hand side here. Basically, you got different sections: contact information, account credentials, payment information, billing address, shipping address, okay. So most of these are input type, most of them are input type text here, right? Well, not necessarily. You do have one for email. You know, you have to change the input type for emails a little different, right? We'll look at that. And password as well. You have a different type for password. And so we'll take a look at those. But you'll also have a select. So here's one of the selects, and then one's on billing and one's on shipping. And also we have a little checkbox here. We have a little checkbox for same as billing. Obviously, if we really wanted to get into it, we could do something where you do that, and then it would actually hide the other things. We do display none on all the rest, and it would collapse all of that, right? Or just wouldn't display it. Be a nice little feature, but we're trying to just keep this assignment kind of simple here. Okay, so back to this. We already did the coding for that in the form. So the next thing is adding different field sets, okay? So So the first field set is contact information, right? Well, the legend you're given is contact information, but it's going ahead and keeping this all together as one. Okay. Um, Contact information. So here, what we're doing is we're doing some rows and columns. Okay. So here we've got a row, and inside this row, we got a couple of columns. We got a column for the given name. We've got a column for the family name. It's a little different because you're seeing it here more in a mobile view, right? So by default, Bootstrap is mobile first, right? So by default, it's going to be mobile first, and then, but you know, if you write it the right way, it'll go ahead and change based on your screen size, right? So this was, row one. So you have row one, two columns. This one's just a one by itself, and then you got email address and confirm. This is another row, right? Another row. Row one, row and column one, and then column two for that. Same thing here. Another row, each having a different column, separate column, etc. down here, right? Anywhere where you see in two here is basically a row with two columns, right? The other ones have single column, okay? But we're just going to put it back here so we can see the code at the same time. So things I want to point out here. So remember what these different things mean. So for doing a grid's all about columns and rows, right? To create a grid, you need to have a container. Our container is basically the whole thing, though. Everything, out inside the body tag is basically the container. The container is the whole thing. And in this container, we do have some other things, but we also have some rows and columns, right? And so remember that MB stands for margin bottom. So for margin bottom 3 on that row, just it gives us a little spacing, okay? The next thing I want to point out, remember that for the labels, the given name has to match the ID, okay? Even though our name's the same, our name, an ID, and our ID and the name and our for are all the same, which is fine, okay? But you need to make sure that for the label to be associated with this input field, the for of the label has to be the same as the ID of the input field, okay? And remember, for forms, what actually gets sent, if I have my form set up as a get, which really isn't best, real quick here, really isn't best for a form because you got passwords, you have some sensitive information. You really don't want to do that. We're just doing that to make it simple. If you do a post, it's going to actually try to submit something and you'll kind of get an error. So it's just kind of a way so we don't have to worry about, you hit the submit button, you get an error, you kind of wonder what's going on. Well, it's because you don't really have a back-end service for that form to call. But in the real world, you're going to have a back-end service, and that back-end service is going to be expecting name value pairs, right? It's going to be using the ID of the input name, this input name and the value. So it'll have given name equals whatever value it is, right? And then it'll have family. Well, I just need to make sure I grab the row in here. It'll have family name down here and a value, right? It uses names. It does not pass IDs. It does not pass IDs to that backend server. It passes names. Think of the ID as just being for developer purposes, for us either styling it or for binding the label to the input, right? That's another reason for the ID. And then also, when we start doing JavaScript, we can grab things by ID as well. So it's usually more for styling and for like that label, um, you know, attaching that label to it and things like that. Whereas the names, all about the data that's being sent. So always remember that. Okay, also in here, what we are using, we're using some classes that are Bootstrap classes. Form label, okay, that's a Bootstrap class, and then all of our input fields are going to be form control. Okay, all of them are going to be form control. All right. We're also using these autocompletes. Okay, we're going to do autocomplete. And so that way, if you've already, as long as you, in your browser, your settings are set, usually by default, it's on autocomplete for your browser settings, unless you probably disabled the, change that. So I would think that all of you will, if you entered some data before on your browser for different fields, it should show, and I'll show you how it works for me here in a minute. But autocomplete, there's a certain, this isn't not just a name that we gave it. Now, obviously for these names, we kind of gave it, but we're using the same one everywhere. But this is a special name for autocomplete. And let me show you something on that real quick. So probably the best reference for this would be the kind of the de facto reference for this. And it's the developer.mozilla.org, the MDN website. And so if you kind of scroll down here for a little bit, it talks about autocomplete. It will be on unless you set it to be off. Let's see here. We go down here. You're going to see different ones. You have to go down quite a bit. So here's some ones for like telephone. Okay. These are the different ones. This is what you'll have to have in that. Okay. You'll have to, well, let's find the one we're kind of using right now. Given name. So right here is given name. You have to use it just like that. You can't call it your own thing. For the autocomplete to work, it has to be what the specific autocomplete list of them are, okay? And so given name's also called the first name, but in some societies, given name's the kind of the more correct way to state first name and last name, okay? Family name is for last name, right? So for first name, you're going to use given name. For last name, you're going to use family name. Okay. And then also there's other ones as well, like password, current password. Okay. So this is kind of the resource you want to look at if you want to make sure that you have all of them. So, we have country here. I don't think we're using that one, but all the different ones are listed. Okay. And I will make sure, let me go here. I'll make sure that I save this link and send this to everyone. Okay. So the first one, we've seen the autocomplete for given name, and we've seen the one down here also for family name, right? So just real quick so we can see it in here. If I click on here, I've got this, some little bit of fake data, but here's this one. It's autocomplete just because all these fields are autocomplete. And so Google is managing that, and it's, Google, I shouldn't say Google, the Chrome browser. Chrome browser is managing this, so it's managing these addresses, right? So just by that, I can automatically put them in there. If for some reason you don't have things already, then you might have to enter them, right? If you have any problems with that, let me know. And then here it's like almost like suggesting a password, okay, let's not get too far ahead here. All right. So we talked about the classes. For a label, you need form label. For the text boxes, for forms, form controls, for form control, right? We talked about the names. Names are the one that get sent via to a back-end server, right? That's when you exchange data. The IDs are used. The IDs are used more for developer purposes, for styling, etc., and for binding the label to the input field. Okay. So back to this, we have a row, and then we have two columns for given name and family name. And then here we've got a phone number. And so also for autocomplete for phone, it's not going to be phone, it's going to be TEL. Okay, it's going to be TEL for autocomplete. And the same thing here is for a telephone number, you should also have type being TEL, right? A lot of our ones are going to be text, right? When you have first name, last name, just basic text, right? We're going to use that. But for telephone numbers, use TEL. For email, you're going to use email, right? For your type and also for your autocomplete. All right. Now here, yeah, so that's email too. Okay, confirm email. We're good. Sorry. As you notice, we also have required. And so this is one of those attributes where you don't have a name value pair, like this is a name value pair. You know, autocomplete equals TEL, right? This is just one of those attributes that don't have a value. You just say this one, this field's required. And this is for the HTML type validation, right? Okay. So, and then each one of these has a field set. Here's the one for account credentials, etc. And pretty much the same thing through here, but really watch out for, here it's talking about a new password, like you're entering a new password here. The autocomplete, so make sure that you're doing the right one. Let's see here. Also for credit card stuff, on the autocomplete in the Mozilla site, so autocomplete for credit cards, for a credit card number is like this. Okay, so you're going to kind of want to look those all up. Okay. But for this credit card information, the input type is still text, right? So a lot of these, most of these are all going to be text, right? But then we know for telephone, we have TEL. For email, we have, for email, we have email for the type for an email. And then for our password is the type password, right? Most other things are going to be a text. Okay. And these ones could be a little tricky, so you need to make sure you look up the autocompletes for these as well. Billing address line, this is the exact way that has to be done, okay? Just like that. Okay. All right, some other things I want to point out is, so one thing here is on that validation, you know how we made those all required? So like right here, we've got, we got some data here. We don't have anything in password. We made pretty much everything's required on this screen. If we hit submit order here, if we hit submit order, then it will validate this screen. And then if it finds something like if there's a required field, you have a required on there and you didn't put a value in there, it's going to put focus in that first one that you didn't put a value in there, right? So I'm going to hit the submit form, but kind of wanted to point out something. This is kind of a little bit of a strange, I don't want to call it a glitch, but maybe it's best to actually have your forms so they're not like too long and you have to do a lot of scrolling. So You know, realistically, we could create this form so it all fit on this page. Takes a little bit more work. Kind of want to keep this form simple for everyone. But it did put focus in here, but actually there was a message. You just didn't see it just because of how it works with the fact of the form so long and the scrolling thing. You didn't see it. It took what it did is kind of the focus. You left the focus off there and you kind of lost it. But let me just show you how to kind of actually look at this. If you want to make sure how that's working. So I'm going to make this a lot smaller. Okay, I just changed the zoom to be a lot smaller. Now, if I hit submit, you'll see the little message up there telling you you have to complete that field. And as you can see, you have a message right up there right now. And I think once I change the zoom, it's going to go away. No, it's right there still. No, it's still small though. But so the validation is actually working where it'll show you the message. You're just not seeing it because of the form length. Okay. Options for that is to make your form all kind of fit on the same page by, adjusting, your headings and size of everything, using both columns in a more efficient way. Also, Bootstrap has some form validation stuff that could be used as well. We're just using the default HTML validation in this case. So that's why that's happening. Just wanted to point that out. Now let's look at some things that we could kind of change on here if we would like. Just to make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing. You don't have to do this necessarily, but just going to show you a couple things that you could possibly do on here. Okay, on here, so let's just say our contact information. There's different things we can do with this. A simple thing you can do is let's do a class equals, and here we can actually do text primary. Let's see. So we could do text primary here. And you can see, or you could do other things. You can make it more bolder, whatever you want to do. Okay, multiple options there. Another thing is sometimes some of these fields is kind of hard to even see the text box, right? So something you can do for that, let's see, on our text box, for given name. So what we could do here, this is a form control. And what we could do here is do like border. And we could do a border secondary. You can do different things here as well. But as you can see now, you can kind of see it a little better. Just other options there as far as that's concerned. Another thing a lot of times is like your check boxes here. Sometimes you can barely see those little check boxes. So, that's actually a very good one to do a little bit of styling on. So for a check box here, we pretty much do the same thing there. So the border. And so you can see it a little better, Obviously, you can give it different colors. Well, you can do primary, you can do that, secondary. You can do other styling as well. So lots of different options there, but just kind of pointing out a few things you can do to make things look a little more easier to read and to understand. Okay, so things we can do with this field set here a little bit. We can go ahead and add a border on this. And do border primary also. That will give us that. And then you can also make it rounded. You know, these are all Bootstrap classes, right? Round it. Give a little round corners there. And then kind of a little bit of padding, right? A little padding around there. Okay. And we can actually do a little more than that. Make it a little better than that even. We can do on this legend, right? This legend, this contact information, we can do what's called float, none. And see how that put that up there. Float, none. And we want to do with auto. And we're going to give that a little bit of padding as well. Let's do... So that makes it look a little nicer, a little easier to read. You know, if you wanted to, you can leave them just like it is if you want. It's this just a little extra stuff just to make it look a little. If you got the time to make it look a little nicer, that's great. If not, no big deal. You know, if you just wanted to submit the regular form, that is okay as well. You wouldn't even need to do that. Okay. Still got that border around there. Okay, that's all right. So that's all I have for this. Please let me know if you have any questions, and have a great day.